Hello, I'm Scott. Today I'm going to be going over why the EU referendum was always going to fail. And this was the crux of it is that campaigns were allowed to openly lie during the campaigning process. The Leave campaign lied about the following statements. That money saved from leaving the EU would be reinvested, and that the NHS would get £350 million a week. And that became a defining talking point for the Leave campaign. A free trade deal with the EU would be the easiest thing in history. That two-thirds of British jobs in manufacturing are dependent on demand from Europe. That Turkey joining the EU would cause millions of immigrants to flood to the UK. That Brexit would lead Scotland to renewing calls for independence. That Brexit does not mean that the UK would leave the single market. Yeah. If these campaigns are allowed to be so factually inaccurate, then there's no way that the public could actually represent their opinions. And it's like democratically, if the majority can't represent their opinions, then that system just is flawed. It will never produce a good result. And since the campaign's been run, people have been fined. The founder of the Believe campaign, Garen Grimes, has been fined £20,000. But for a campaigner of this category, like this scale, that's a drop in the ocean. And punishments like that are really, slaps on the wrist. They're not going to have any impact or really prevent things like this from happening again. Um, and the thing that's really frustrating about this is barring myself and people my age moving countries, we're going to have to deal and work in a post-Brexit economy. And a lot of this is just because of lies. And it's not like Theresa May came back and said, after she secured the deal with the EU and said, look, negotiations were really tough. I couldn't get everything that I wanted. And, I had to compromise on some things. And I thought, maybe less money for the NHS was something that, was a lever that I could pull to, get a bit more in something that, I thought, was more important for the country. And she came back and was like, okay, the NHS is now going to receive 250 million a week extra. It just didn't exist like that. It was never a goal or an aim of the campaign in reality. And I think ways to reduce this could be by having career damaging legislation. So my proposal for this is that it would be really similar to the punishment that a board of directors receives when a company goes into administration, which is that they cannot be on another board of directors for 5 years. So it means that people that have proven that they can't manage companies are not just constantly cycling through companies and making bad decisions and making more companies fail. Um, so a system like this would exist for politicians, and it would stop those that have deliberately gone out of their way to misinform, and then from those actions would make sure that they can't be allowed to be involved in political movements for a similar time frame. Something that actually damages your career and is actually a negative consequence for these people. Um, and this would work to reduce incoming political shitstorms because the people making bad decisions are now no longer allowed to have a working capacity in new ideas and new campaigns. And that would actually cycle new people into the political scene. So people would have to be replaced with new people. Um, and that's really good when someone's demonstrated that they're just so untrustworthy that they're just willing to barefaced lie for their own personal or ulterior gains. Um, and it makes things like when Theresa May says, I'm following the will of the British people, or I'm working on the country's best interests, on behalf of the country's best interests, I just can't help but feel like those words are so grossly misleading. The Brexit campaign, both Leave and Remain, both sides of it were so fundamentally flawed that it's almost impossible to gain an accurate representation of what the majority wants. And in a democratic system, it means that it's failed. Um, a large number of people could have voted Leave because they genuinely thought it was the best thing for the NHS, and they saw, they might have seen all the things in winter of 2017 that the NHS is barely surviving because we've been having not as bad winters as we've been expecting, and they go, oh, I really want to focus on that. Um, But things like that just fall to the wayside once the referendum has been passed, and that's really bad. And I think there are so many ways in which things like this can be improved, and I don't think you know, you don't need to be a genius, you don't need world-changing ideas, you just need people to have an incentive to not just lie about everything, which is really not that difficult to employ. Um, and those are my views on that. And I'm going to follow this up with a video on flaws on the first past the post voting system and how that doesn't represent a lot of people effectively, and how democracy fails in a lot of ways, particularly in the UK. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, hit the subscribe button. Really helps me out. And if you loved it, hit the bell so you can be part of the notification squad. See you later. Bye bye.